They never saw anything fly. They only heard the sound of objects hitting the ground right at their feet. And the more people gathered to watch, the worse it became. In the summer of a quiet residential neighborhood, a family prepared for something ordinary, redecorating their home. New wallpaper had already been bought, tools were ready, and July 9th was marked on the calendar. Nothing about that address suggested danger, history, or anything out of the ordinary. But once the walls were exposed, something inside the house woke up. What happened next unfolded in front of neighbors, police officers, and dozens of witnesses. Objects began to fall from nowhere. Rooms emptied themselves. Items appeared outside the house without anyone entering or leaving. No one ever saw them move, and whatever was inside that house did not want to be ignored. What unsettled the witnesses most was not the noise or the falling objects, but the complete lack of motion. People instinctively looked upward whenever something hit the ground, yet no one ever saw anything coming down. There was no arc, no trajectory, no hint of movement in the air. Objects simply appeared at the moment of impact, as if they had never occupied the space between the ceiling and the floor. As the fragments of roof tile continued to fall, the crowd in the yard grew restless. Some stepped back instinctively, others leaned forward, trying to catch the impossible act in progress. Several people positioned themselves near the house walls, eyes fixed on the roofline, expecting to finally see a hand, a shadow, or at least the silhouette of someone throwing debris. Nothing appeared. Nenad attempted to recreate the sound by tossing a similar piece of tile onto the ground. The comparison only deepened the confusion. The real impacts sounded duller, heavier, as if the objects carried weight without momentum. A few neighbors whispered that the sound reminded them of something being placed rather than dropped. The police officers exchanged uneasy glances. Their training offered procedures, not explanations. They separated the crowd, instructed people to remain at a distance, and began a second inspection of the house. Each room was entered carefully, as though someone might still be hiding inside. Closets were opened, beds checked beneath, the attic access examined, the basement door unlocked and searched. The house was empty. When they stepped back outside, another object struck the ground near the gate. This time, several people swore they felt a brief shift in the air pressure moments before impact, like a faint compression, as if space itself had tightened and released. The officers requested silence. For nearly a full minute, nothing happened. Then a cup shattered inside the kitchen. Everyone rushed toward the windows. The cup had been sitting upright near the sink. No vibration preceded its fall, no tremor, no sound of movement. It simply lay broken on the floor, surrounded by smaller shards that suggested it had fallen straight down rather than being pushed. Moments later, another cup followed, then a saucer. The crowd began to retreat instinctively, as though the house itself had crossed an invisible boundary. Someone suggested leaving the property entirely. Someone else insisted on staying to witness whatever came next. Arguments broke out in low, nervous voices. When the hallway light bulb twisted loose and struck the floor, a sharp, metallic click echoed through the house before the glass exploded. The socket showed no damage. The bulb itself was warm to the touch when inspected, as if it had been unscrewed slowly rather than forced free. At this point, the police ceased attempting explanations. One officer radioed for guidance, but there was nothing in protocol to reference. They advised the family to vacate the house temporarily. Nenad refused. The house was his. Whatever was happening, it was happening to them, and he would not abandon it without understanding why. As daylight faded, Shadows stretched unnaturally across the yard. The air grew still. The absence of wind made every sound carry farther. Whispers felt amplified, as though the space itself was listening. It was then that the metal tray emerged. Those closest to the doorway insisted the door had been closed. The tray did not strike the door. It did not push through it. It simply appeared beyond the threshold and fell outward, clattering loudly onto the concrete. The sound echoed down the street, drawing even more onlookers. The tray bore no scratches, no dents. Nothing suggested force or speed. It looked as if it had been gently released from a height that did not exist. A second inspection of the house followed, slower and more methodical. Every door was checked and marked. The positions of objects were noted. Windows were shut. Curtains pulled aside. Nothing was left unexplored. Then came the cream box. It landed softly near Lazar's feet, close enough that he instinctively stepped back. He recognized it immediately. Jelena had purchased it only days earlier and complained about its price. The box was clean, undamaged, and unmistakably hers. Jelena retrieved it, visibly shaken but defiant. She returned it to her bedroom and placed it on the nightstand. Several witnesses followed her partway inside, stopping at the doorway. No one saw the box move after that. Minutes passed. The father returned from the church carrying holy water. He spoke quietly, avoiding eye contact with the crowd. When he sprinkled the house, the action felt symbolic rather than confident, as if he was performing a ritual out of obligation rather than belief. The house remained silent. Then the cream box appeared again. This time, it landed farther from the doorway, near the center of the yard. The sound it made was almost gentle, like something being set down rather than thrown. No one screamed. No one ran. The crowd had reached a state beyond panic, suspended in stunned observation. The box was returned again. It came back a third time. That repetition broke something in the atmosphere. Several people began to cry. Others crossed themselves repeatedly. Someone suggested that the house was responding, that it recognized resistance. The idea was dismissed immediately, yet no one offered a better one. Jelena insisted on entering the house again, determined not to let fear dictate her actions. She moved carefully, speaking aloud as if to anchor herself. The kitchen felt colder than the rest of the house. She turned on the light and reached for the kettle. The cabinet exploded with sound. The banging was violent, rhythmic, and loud enough to cause people outside to recoil. It sounded as if multiple objects were being hurled against the interior walls of the cabinet. Jelena screamed and fled back outside. When the cabinet was opened, it was empty. Not a single object inside. No loose hinge, no mark on the wood. That was when people began to notice something else. Nothing ever moved while being watched. Objects fell when attention wavered. Sounds occurred when people looked away. The moment someone fixed their gaze on a location, it remained inert. As soon as they turned, something happened elsewhere. A pattern emerged. The house behaved as if it avoided being observed. Over the next several days, disturbances continued sporadically. Smaller objects, lighter sounds, a chair shifting slightly when no one was in the room, a door found open that had been closed moments before. Each event was minor on its own, but together they formed a relentless pressure that eroded sleep and certainty. The family stopped leaving items in obvious places. It didn't help. Police returned once more, finding nothing new. Neighbors began avoiding the street. Children were kept indoors. Conversations stopped when members of the family approached. Weeks passed. Then, gradually, the activity lessened. No final event marked its end. No explanation surfaced. The house simply became quieter, as if whatever had been present lost interest or achieved its purpose. The family resumed their lives, though none of them ever slept soundly in that house again. Years later, the house still stands. No plaque marks the events. No official record explains them. The family rarely speaks of that summer, except to say that whatever happened did not want them to ignore it. What remains most disturbing is not the falling objects, nor the witnesses, nor even the police involvement. It's the pattern. The house did not react when it was empty. It reacted when people were watching. It escalated when it was challenged. And every object that left the house did so without being seen, as if whatever lived there understood one rule perfectly. If you are never seen moving, no one can ever prove you exist. And sometimes that's exactly the point. Some stories don't end when the video does. If this one stayed with you, leave your thoughts below. And if you're ready for more stories like this, you know where to find them.